The rise in political violence in this country is a sobering reality that when the history of these times is written will be front and center. According to a recent Reuters investigation, political violence in America has not been this bad since the 1970s. But unlike the 70s, today's violence is, quote, aimed at people instead of property. And most of the recent deadly outbursts have come from the right. Viewers of this show are all too familiar with what some of those deadly threats and outbursts have looked like. There were the, quote, unprecedented number of threats against FBI agents who participated in the search of Mar-a-Lago for classified documents. There were the death threats against Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, and the threats against Fulton County, Georgia DA Fani Willis, and New York Attorney General Tish James, and Judge Tanya Chutkan. If you are sensing a theme, you are not wrong. The common denominator here is, of course, the disgraced, twice impeached, 4 times indicted ex-president who's become a kind of nexus between the ordinary workings of law enforcement and our judicial system and political violence. And now it has happened again. It has been less than 48 hours since the Colorado State Supreme Court ruled that Donald Trump is disqualified from being on the Republican primary ballot in that state. And now, in the wake of that landmark ruling, the judges who sit on the Colorado State Supreme Court are being targeted by the right, by followers of Donald J. Trump. According to a report obtained by NBC News, quote, social media outlets have been flooded with threats against the justices who ruled in the case. The nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that conducted the research found that, quote, some social media users posted the justices' email addresses, phone numbers, and office building addresses. Others, quote, noted a variety of methods that could be used to kill those perceived as Trump's enemies. Hollow point bullets, rifles, rope, bombs. The other finding, that this, quote, significant violent rhetoric against the justices and Democrats, often in direct response to Trump's posts about the ruling on his platform, Truth Social. We have seen this movie before, this call and response between the disgraced ex-president and his followers. But this is dangerous and potentially deadly. And whether we like it or not, it has become a hallmark of our political discourse in 2023. And that is where we start this hour with former Assistant Director for Counterintelligence at the FBI, Frank Figliuzzi. And with me at the table, former top official with the Justice Department and MSNBC legal analyst, Andrew Weissmann. Plus, Democratic strategist and director of the Public Policy Program at Hunter College, Basil Smikle. Frank, let's start with you. The post that this nonpartisan group, they found they're repulsive. I want to be sensitive to that. I also think, though, it's important that we bear witness to just how depraved they are. Here's just one of them, quote, what do you call 7 justices from the Colorado Supreme Court at the bottom of the ocean? A good start. End quote. Frank, you are a veteran of the FBI. Just how dangerous is this?
Yeah, you were kind of being restrained because there's even far more disturbing quotes coming on these posts. And it didn't take long, did it? 24 hours after the Colorado Supreme Court decision. And yes, it's true. They're driven directly by Trump's response to the court decision. And this interesting linkage, Alicia, that Trump makes with anything that rules against him, anything he doesn't like. It's not about being against him. It's something horrible for America. So his immediate responses that he posted on his platform, Truth Social, were things like, sad day for America, a shame for the country. No, it's not. No, it's not a shame for the country. It's not a sad day for America. It's a court in one of our states making a really tough ruling, an historic, unprecedented ruling, but nonetheless following the facts and going where the facts and the law take them. And in this case, where the Constitution of our country takes them. So it's not a sad day or a shame when a court tries to apply the facts to the Constitution and comes up with a decision. The other thing I think is interesting is these quotes that are already out there are actionable, what we call in law enforcement, actionable threats. They're not aspirational. They describe how to kill the justices in great detail. They describe what they're going to do with the justices. And in many of them, the most actionable examples, the end result is a dead justice. So this isn't going to stop here because we've got about 16 states with some form of challenge going on right now to whether or not Trump should be on the ballot. So if you think it's isolated to just a group of justices in Colorado, it's not. The plaintiffs or petitioners in Colorado, they're in danger. But put that across the 16 or so states that have similar challenges going on right now. And you've got not just a threat to people and property, you've got a threat to our system, our judiciary, and our rule of law.
I mean, to Frank's point, Basil, about just how pervasive this is, how widespread it is, DOJ announced that a man in New Hampshire was indicted just today for having threatened to kill 3 different presidential candidates. Republicans know this, right? I mean, they see the connection between the rhetoric. They say that they themselves are scared. What then is the remedy?
Well, the remedy is taking Donald Trump out of the equation, but A, he will not take himself out of the equation, and B, when you have other Republican candidates for president basically supporting him in this moment in time, saying that the court went too far and so on, they're essentially giving him all the fuel that he needs to continue to do what he's doing, instead of calling it out in the ways that they could to essentially extricate him from the rest of the Republican Party. That has not happened. So trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube at this point, I don't think that could at all happen. And and it's an important point that Frank makes in talking about how quickly this happened right after the decision. After the Dobbs decision, you didn't hear Democrats, not Joe Biden, exhorting individuals to go after the justices after the Dobbs decision. What did Democrats do? They went out and voted. They went out and actually worked within the system to find ways to change it. That is not what Donald Trump and his supporters are going to do. And I think we need to be prepared for that.
I think, Andrew, about the fact that Donald Trump's team is going to appeal to the Supreme Court sometime after the Christmas holiday. This becomes the next flashpoint, right? And the eyes move from the Colorado State Supreme Court to the United States Supreme Court.
Absolutely, and it should. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with people being angry or disappointed with the Colorado Supreme Court decision and saying it's wrong, and other people saying it's right. That's as to Basil's point, that is exactly what can happen in America. But your intro is really about the state of America today, which is there will always be people who are nutty or crazy or the lone wolves who react and seek violence. There will always be some people like Donald Trump who are not condoning or they're approving of this, or just look at what he did during January 6th, where there was just silent in the face of violence they could stop. To me, this is really about the sort of complacency on both the right and the left. You don't have people on the right saying stop. You need to have the Mitch McConnells of the world, the people who believe in law and order, saying something about this. And the Democrats should be saying, how are you a rule of law party, and how are we a rule of law society when this is what we've come to? I mean, it is, I think that the rest of the world can look at us and think it's a laughingstock to have this kind of violent rhetoric in the face of a legal decision. It is, the next step is totally to appeal it. And you know what? Maybe the Supreme Court will agree with Donald Trump. So be it. That's the rule of law. But the idea that there isn't this sort of outcry and that this is not on the sort of front page of every newspaper saying this is not tolerable, this is not what America is supposed to be about. And you don't see that sort of rising to that level because I think we've become inured to what Donald Trump has done for the last, 4 years of his presidency and the few years he's now been sort of vying to be the next president.
In fact, none of this is theoretical. This summer, Nicole, I'm sure you remember when she had sat down with Judge Esther Salas, whose son was murdered in their home by a deranged man. He had a political vendetta. I want to play a little bit of what it is that Esther told Nicole. Take a listen.
I grabbed our 2 dogs and I walked down the street to this grassy area by our house. And as I was walking, just something didn't feel right. And I noticed the car was sort of out of place. And I remember looking, and he looked, and we locked eyes for a second. And then he just looked away. And I would later find out that that would be the man that would come the next day at 5 o'clock, ring our doorbell, and take my only child.
And he was looking for you.
Yeah, he wanted me. We need to protect judges. We need to make judges feel protected. Judges need to be able to do their jobs without fear of retaliation, retribution, or death.
Right. to keep her son's legacy alive. In honor of her son, Judge Salas, she is on a mission to protect other judges by scrubbing judges' personal information from the internet, banning the resale of that information by data brokers. I'm struck by the fact that here, in the wake of this ruling, the judges on the Colorado Supreme Court have had their personal information, right, their email addresses, their phone numbers, their office addresses put out there. How do you even protect them? Frank?
Thank you. So, look, we're in an environment where last night on Fox News, one of the anchors put up on the screen the photos and names of the 4 justices in Colorado who constituted the majority decision here. And the banner over their photos was something like, "Meet the judges who hate democracy." That's where we are now. So they view this as an existential threat to democracy, that the court system works, like it or not, your decision or not, but that's where we are. It's hard to counter this except to tell people, flip this scenario and someday imagine that the courts are doing their job and you love the decisions. Do you want those justices dead because they've ruled in favor of your side of the House? This is going to go up all the way to the Supreme Court. The security is going to get tightened there as well. But again, this is so much more than just physical security of people. It's about securing our future. And as we know it, the criminal justice system, the judiciary, the rule of law.